All right, let's dive into a topic that sparked a ton of debate: Jewish contributions to money, power, and innovation. We're checking out the Echoes of Insight YouTube channel.
And it's definitely a subject that can get, well, kind of twisted.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going straight to the facts from reliable sources. We're here to understand the history, not spread stereotypes or those wild conspiracy theories.
Absolutely. This deep dive is all about uncovering the real story. Why is this important, you ask? Well, understanding the real drivers behind any group's success, and especially a group with a history as complex as the Jewish people, helps us challenge those assumptions we all carry around. And it also helps us learn from their resilience.
Absolutely. It's about going deeper than just the surface and really seeing how cultural and historical stuff plays out.
Okay, so let's jump into it.
Yeah.
One thing we see over and over is this idea that Ashkenazi Jews come from the Khazars, that Turkic group that converted to Judaism back in the Middle Ages.
Right.
It's often called the Khazar myth. Have you come across this one?
Of course, it's a theory that's been around forever but has been totally debunked.
Really?
Yeah, like linguist Alexander Beiders, he's done some awesome work on this.
Oh, wow.
He looks at names and languages, even genetic data.
Oh, wow.
And there's just no solid link between the Khazars and Ashkenazi Jews.
It's kind of wild how a theory can stick around,
Yeah.
even when there's evidence against it.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny, some genetic studies trying to prove this Khazar connection actually ended up placing Ashkenazi ancestry in the Black Sea.
Oh, really?
And Baido points out that only fish live there.
So basically, people jumping to conclusions. And what's sad is that this whole myth has been used to undermine Jewish claims to Israel and fuel some pretty nasty stereotypes.
Totally.
Speaking of stereotypes, let's talk about this one. The whole Jews control global finance thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's an old one and a harmful one, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. This belief has a long and honestly pretty troubling history.
For sure. It's one of those ideas that can have really serious consequences out in the world.
Right. And to really understand it, we got to go way back in time.
Okay.
For centuries, Jews in Europe couldn't own land or do a lot of jobs.
So what happened?
This basically pushed a lot of them into roles like money lending, which then, over time gave people this perception that Jews were like experts in finance.
Ah, I see. Almost like history created this stereotype, not some like inherent trait.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how being excluded and facing prejudice shapes how people see each other.
So while some Jewish individuals have obviously been very successful in finance, claiming they control the whole global financial system isn't just wrong, it's a massive oversimplification. I mean, the global financial system is huge and complicated, with tons of institutions, individuals, and markets.
Oh, yeah.
To say it's controlled by one single ethnic or religious group just isn't realistic.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so we've busted some harmful myths. Now, for the really interesting part, if it's not some grand conspiracy, how do we explain the fact that there are so many Jewish individuals in fields like science, the arts, and business?
Right.
What's the real story there?
Well, it's not one single thing. It's more about how cultural values and historical experiences come together.
Let's unpack that a bit. What specific cultural values are we talking about here?
I think a big one is this really deep emphasis on education. It's been super important in Jewish culture for centuries.
Okay.
Like, valuing learning and intellectual pursuit really leads to a culture that prioritizes critical thinking, solving problems, and being innovative.
That makes a lot of sense. And I imagine living through centuries of diaspora, adapting to new environments all the time, that must have played a role in building resilience and a kind of like entrepreneurial spirit.
Oh, totally.
Like always having to adapt and find new ways to thrive, especially in tough situations, fostered this resourcefulness and a willingness to embrace new ideas.
It's incredible, really, just how adaptable they've had to be.
Yeah. And then there's the whole thing about networks and community support.
Oh, right. That's huge. Jewish communities, often centered in cities, created strong networks that gave people access to education, resources, and opportunities.
It's really amazing how that sense of community and support played such a vital role in fostering success.
Yeah.
And this isn't just anecdotal, the numbers back it up.
It is pretty striking. Jews make up a tiny, tiny fraction of the global population, something like 0.2%.
Really?
But they've won a disproportionately high number of Nobel Prizes, about 22%.
That's incredible. It really highlights how those cultural values and historical experiences can shape a group's path. And it's a valuable lesson, I think, for ARNY Group, really, about how resilience and a strong community can help lead to success.
Yeah, it challenges us to look beyond stereotypes and see how complex human achievement is.
Okay, so we've laid some groundwork, debunked some common myths, and explored this broader context of Jewish success. But I'm excited to dive into some specific examples.
Yeah, me too.
Let's get into those real-world achievements that illustrate these themes we've been talking about.
Definitely. You know, it's really cool how these cultural threads just kind of run through history and pop up in all sorts of achievements.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. So let's get into some specifics. Where do we even start? I feel like you have a talent for connecting things that seem totally random. What really stands out to you?
Well, if we're talking about Jewish contributions to innovation, we can't ignore the world of science and medicine.
Of course.
Like, think about Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
His theory of relativity completely changed how we understand physics.
For sure.
And then there's Jonas Salk, who developed the polio vaccine.
Yes. I mean, they had a global impact, saving countless lives and changing how we see the universe.
It's crazy to think about the ripple effects of their work.
Totally.
And then you've got the startup nation, what they call Israel.
Oh, yeah.
It's like this breeding ground for tech innovation, pushing boundaries and stuff like cybersecurity, agriculture, even biotechnology.
I think I read somewhere that Israel has the most startups per person in the whole world.
It's wild.
It's incredible how this tiny country has become such a powerhouse.
Totally. And I think it goes back to that adaptability and ingenuity we were talking about earlier. They take challenges and turn them into opportunities.
Yeah.
It's like they're using your resources to come up with cutting-edge solutions.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about those big names in Silicon Valley who've reshaped, like, the whole digital world.
Right.
Sergey Brin, who co-founded Google, and Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Their creations have totally revolutionized how we communicate and get information.
Their influence is huge. They haven't just built successful businesses.
Yeah.
They've changed how we interact with the world, like fundamentally. And it's interesting to see how all these achievements in such different areas connect back to those themes of intellectual curiosity and community support and that drive to solve problems.
It's like their history pushed them not just to survive, but to thrive, to really make a difference. And their contributions go way beyond just tech and science. Right?
Oh, absolutely. You look at the arts and humanities and you see figures like Franz Kafka. His books explore like the deepest parts of what it means to be human.
Right.
And then there's Steven Spielberg, whose movies have captured everyone's imagination for generations.
So many incredible creative contributions, and it makes me wonder, are there any less obvious factors that have contributed to this, like, remarkable track record of achievement?
That's a great question. And it leads us to an area that can be kind of mysterious and misunderstood.
Oh.
Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, you wouldn't typically think of it as being related to innovation.
Okay.
But there's a fascinating connection there.
Okay, Kabbalah.
You're listening to Echoes of Insight, where we dive deep into the topics shaping our world. From the planet and politics to health, consciousness, economy, and alternative lifestyles. If you're enjoying the journey, make sure to subscribe and share this podcast with others who love exploring new perspectives.
That's definitely intriguing, but I have to admit I don't know much about it. Can you give me and our listeners a little crash course? What is Kabbalah, and why is it considered controversial?
Sure. Kabbalah, which means received wisdom, is a system of Jewish mysticism that tries to understand the hidden parts of God and the universe.
So it's about finding the deeper meaning behind what we can see.
Exactly. But how does this connect to, inventing Google or developing some groundbreaking technology?
Right, that's what I'm wondering.
Well, Kabbalah uses all this intricate symbolism and numerology, these diagrams, to explore creation and how humans are connected to the divine. It's about searching for those hidden patterns and connections that make up reality. And that way of thinking can be super powerful when you're trying to solve problems or come up with new ideas.
So it's not about, like, magic spells or seeing the future.
No, not really.
But more about a way of seeing the world that encourages a different type of thinking.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Kabbalah encourages a mindset that seeks those deeper connections, those relationships between things that seem totally different. It's like those connect the dots puzzles, but on a massive cosmic scale.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It makes sense, though. If you can understand the underlying structure of reality, maybe you can gain insights that could lead to something totally new.
Exactly. And there's another big concept in Kabbalah that's relevant here, Tikkun Olam.
Oh, right. That means repairing the world, right?
Yeah. We talked about it a bit earlier. It's often seen as a driving force behind Jewish philanthropy and being involved in the community.
Yeah.
And this concept, which is deeply rooted in Jewish mysticism, could also be seen as a motivator for innovation.
How so?
It's that desire to use your knowledge and creativity not just for yourself, but to make the world a better place.
So Kabbalah provides both a way to think innovatively and the ethical push to use it for good.
Exactly. It's a
Right.
pretty powerful combo. And it helps explain why Jewish contributions aren't just about, material success. There's a deep desire to help humanity.
I'm glad we talked about this because it adds a whole new dimension to how we understand Jewish contributions. But we can't really talk about Jewish history without acknowledging some of the tougher parts, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier about controversial topics. What were you thinking of?
Well, there's this concept called the Erev Rav, which literally means mixed multitude.
Okay.
It's caused a lot of debate and has been used to justify some really harmful prejudice.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that term. Can you break it down for our listeners? What exactly is the Erev Rav and why is it so controversial?
The term refers to a group of people who weren't Israelites.
Okay.
But according to the Torah, they joined the Israelites when they were leaving Egypt.
Oh, interesting. So they weren't ethnically or religiously Jewish, but decided to follow Moses and adopt the laws of this new nation.
Exactly. And the Torah mentions them, so it's not like some made-up story. But over time, how people interpreted the Erev Rav started to have negative meanings.
So how did this historical event become so controversial?
Well, some rabbinic and mystical texts portray the Erev Rav as this troublemaking group who stirred up conflict among the Israelites.
Really?
They're often linked to things like the Golden Calf incident.
Oh, wow.
And some texts even say they were spiritually impure.
So they became a symbol of people who threatened the unity or purity of the Jewish people.
Exactly. And sadly, some people still use the term to put down Jews who they see as too assimilated or secular.
So they're basically using a historical event to exclude or demonize people within their own community.
It's really problematic.
Definitely. It reminds us that history can be twisted to fit an agenda. And it shows how important it is to think critically and understand the context of history.
Totally agree. And it's super important to remember that using historical events to justify prejudice against any group is never okay.
Absolutely not. We've explored Kabbalah and tackled this complicated concept of the Erev Rav.
Yeah.
It's been a fascinating journey so far. What's next on our deep dive? It's pretty amazing how much we've covered already.
It is.
We've debunked those myths, dug into those cultural influences, even explored Kabbalah. And there's still more.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about this next layer you mentioned, something about an astrological dimension.
Oh, yeah. It might seem a little out there, but astrology is actually woven into Jewish tradition.
Really?
I mean, way back when, the stars weren't just, twinkly lights in the sky.
Right.
They were seen as these powerful forces that could shape your destiny.
It is fascinating to think about how ancient cultures saw the heavens as like a reflection of divine order,
Yeah.
like a cosmic blueprint for life on Earth.
Yeah.
That influenced Jewish thought, too.
Totally. That idea of the cosmos as a source of wisdom, it really permeated Jewish tradition.
Huh.
You see it in Jewish mysticism and symbolism.
Okay, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
But give me some examples. How did astrology actually show up in Jewish practices?
Well, one example is the concept of mazal.
Rizal.
Yeah, like mazel tov.
Oh, right. We say that to congratulate people, right? Like wishing them good luck.
Exactly. But the word mazal goes deeper than that. It actually comes from the Hebrew word for constellation.
Oh, wow.
It reflects that belief that our lives are to some degree influenced by those celestial alignments.
So it's not luck in the random chance kind of way.
No.
It's more about acknowledging those cosmic forces that play a part in our lives.
Yeah, it's like recognizing that we're all part of this bigger cosmic order, connected to the universe in ways we don't always understand.
I kind of like that. It makes you feel small but connected at the same time. So this astrological awareness, did it affect other parts of Jewish tradition too?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Think about the Jewish calendar.
Okay.
It's lunisolar, meaning it's based on both the sun and moon cycles. And a lot of Jewish holidays are tied to specific astrological events.
Okay, now you have to tell me which ones. Which holidays have these hidden astrological connections?
Well, think about Passover.
Okay.
It happens in the spring, right around the vernal equinox.
The equinox, when day and night are equal, isn't that seen as a time of renewal and rebirth?
Exactly. And those themes really fit with the Passover story,
Yeah.
Liberation from slavery, that journey towards freedom.
Wow, I never thought of it like that. So Passover isn't just about remembering a historical event. It's also celebrating a cosmic alignment.
Yeah, it's about connecting with those universal energies of renewal and liberation that show up both in the sky and in our own lives.
That's so cool. Are there other holidays with those kinds of connections?
Tons! Like Sukkot, the festival of booths that's celebrated in the fall around the autumnal equinox.
Oh,
It remembers the Israelites' journey through the wilderness, living in those temporary shelters.
so another time of equal day and night, but now we're moving towards winter.
Exactly. And Sukkot, with those temporary shelters, reminds us that life is fragile, but also resilient. It's about that cyclical nature of abundance and scarcity.
It's amazing how these astrological layers make Jewish traditions even richer. You see familiar rituals in a whole new way.
Right. And it goes back to something we've been exploring this whole time. There's often more to things than we realize.
Yeah, it's like cracking a secret code, uncovering those hidden meanings and connections. So what can we take away from this ancient wisdom, this whole idea of mixing astrology and spirituality?
Well, I think one big thing is remembering to align ourselves with those natural rhythms. We're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, finding harmony with the universe instead of trying to, force our will on it.
Exactly. If we approach it thoughtfully, astrology can help us understand ourselves better, see where we fit in the grand scheme of things. It's not about letting the stars control us.
Right.
It's about using this ancient knowledge to connect with the cosmos and, in doing so, connect with ourselves.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It actually reminds me of Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. Maybe by understanding this interconnectedness, we can help create a world that's more in harmony.
I think so, too. And that's a great note to wrap things up on, don't you think?
I think so. This deep dive has been incredible. We've gone from debunking myths to exploring cultural influences, from Kabbalah to the stars. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah. It's been great exploring these ideas with you. And for everyone listening, I hope you've gained a new appreciation for all the amazing contributions of Jewish people throughout history.
And that's a wrap for today's deep dive. To our listeners, stay curious, keep your minds open, and don't forget to look up at the stars every now and then. You never know what insights you might find in that celestial tapestry.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Echoes of Insight. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who loves exploring big ideas. Together, let's keep the conversation going. See you next time.